I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, writing about my wife's betrayal for the world to see. But here I am, tired, frustrated, and more than a little heartbroken. Let me take you through this roller coaster of emotions and the events that led to my realization that my wife, Sarah, was cheating on me. We had been married for 7 years. From the outside looking in, we seemed like the perfect couple. I was a software engineer, and Sarah was a marketing manager at one of those trendy tech firms in Silicon Valley. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we made it work. Or so I thought. In recent months, I'd started to notice some changes in her behavior, but I brushed them off as just the stress of work. She was often glued to her phone, texting and giggling in ways that felt too flirty for my comfort. I tried to ignore the feeling that something was off, but it nagged at me. It all came to a head one Friday night when I decided to surprise her with a dinner date. I finished work early, bought a nice bottle of wine and picked up her favorite Thai food. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car was already there. I felt a little flutter of excitement, thinking about how happy she'd be to see me. I walked into the house, calling out her name, but all I got in return was silence. I shrugged it off, thinking she might be in the shower or lost in a book. But then I heard a noise, a soft giggle that didn't belong to me. My heart raced as I approached our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar and I could see Sarah's silhouette through the crack. I peeked inside and my stomach dropped. There she was, sprawled across our bed, her phone in hand, laughing at something on the screen. And next to her, some guy I'd never seen before. I froze, my mind racing. Was I really seeing this? I stepped back, feeling both anger and disbelief wash over me. I wanted to storm in there and confront them, but part of me was paralyzed by shock. Instead, I quietly backed away, doing my best to keep my breathing steady as I slipped outside. My mind was a whirlwind, and I felt like I was going to be sick. After pacing around the block, I finally found the courage to confront her. What would I say? How would I even begin to process this? Eventually, I steeled myself and returned home. When I walked into the bedroom, Sarah's face went pale. "Oh my God, Jake," she gasped, scrambling off the bed. I didn't give her a chance to explain. "Who the hell is he?" I demanded, pointing towards the guy who was now fumbling to get dressed. The air felt thick with tension as his eyes darted between us. I remember feeling a mix of rage and betrayal. Sarah's response was almost comical in its absurdity. "It's not what it looks like," she exclaimed, her voice laced with panic. I was incredulous. "Really? Because it looks like my wife is cheating on me," I shouted, feeling the anger boil over. The guy, now fully dressed, made a hasty exit, leaving us alone to deal with the mess. Sarah's excuses poured out in a frantic rush. "We were just talking, I swear. He's just a friend from work. I didn't mean for this to happen." Her words felt like knives, twisting in my gut. How could she lie so easily? I wanted to scream, to shake sense into her, but instead I felt a hollow pit opening in my chest. How could I have been so blind? I thought we had something special. I thought we had built a life together, but now I felt like I was standing on quicksand. Her words became a blur as I fought to process the betrayal. It wasn't just the act itself, but the complete disregard for my feelings and trust that cut the deepest. I had loved her fiercely, and now I felt like a fool. As the confrontation dragged on, I was torn between the anger and the deep hurt. I wanted to lash out, but I also wanted answers. Why did she do it? Was it something I had done, or something I hadn't done? It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie instead of living my life. The night turned into a blur of accusations, tears, and desperate attempts at explanation. I was not just confronting her about the affair, but grappling with the collapse of everything I thought I knew about our marriage. In the end, as she stood there crying, begging for forgiveness, I realized I had a decision to make. Could I forgive her? Could I trust her again? Or was it time to think about my future without her? As I wrestled with these thoughts, I felt the walls closing in, and I knew I was on the brink of a life-changing decision. The days that followed that fateful night felt like a blur, a distorted reality where everything I had once believed in came crashing down around me. Sarah was desperately trying to piece together whatever shred of our relationship remained, but all I could think about was the betrayal. I was torn apart inside, caught in a whirlwind of emotions that left me feeling raw and exposed. I needed space to think, so I moved into the guest room, an unfamiliar place filled with shadows of memories that felt tainted. Sarah would knock on the door, pleading for me to talk, to give her a chance to explain. Each time I heard her voice, I felt the urge to open the door to let her back in, but I resisted. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. Instead, I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and trying to drown my sorrows in code and deadlines. But even that didn't offer the solace I sought. Every keystroke felt heavy with doubt, every email a reminder of the life I was losing. Colleagues began to notice my sudden change in demeanor. My friend Brian, a fellow developer who had always been my confidant, cornered me one afternoon. "Jake, man, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, concern etched on his face. After a moment of hesitation, I finally let it all spill out. The affair, the confrontation, the devastation. Brian listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to disbelief. "Dude, I can't believe this. I always thought you two were solid," he said, shaking his head. "Have you talked to her since?" "Not really. She's been trying, but I just need time," I replied, feeling a mix of anger and sadness rise up inside me again. "Look, I don't want to tell you what to do, but you have to consider your own happiness too. You deserve better than this," he said, his voice steady. His words lingered in my mind like a mantra, but the decision wasn't that simple. I didn't want to throw away 7 years of memories and shared dreams. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that every moment I spent with Sarah now felt tainted by her betrayal. I started reflecting on our relationship before the affair. Had I missed the signs? Had we truly been happy, or was it all a facade? One evening, while I sat in the dim light of the guest room, I decided to take a deeper look into Sarah's behavior leading up to the affair. I replayed the conversations we'd had, the moments that felt strange but I had brushed off. I remembered how she'd started going out more without me, claiming it was for work or a night out with friends. Was it a cover-up for something larger? I felt sick thinking about it, and the more I thought, the angrier I became. On a particularly restless night, I decided to dive into her social media. I knew it was a slippery slope, but curiosity got the better of me. I sifted through her posts, looking for any clues that might shed light on her betrayal. That's when I stumbled upon a few photos that made my stomach churn, pictures of her with him, looking all too cozy. They were taken at various events, smiling, their bodies closed together. My heart raced as I scrolled through the comments, some of which were from mutual friends who had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. How could they not see it? How could she lie to everyone? The anger surged within me, igniting a fire that I didn't know how to control. I had to confront her again, but this time it wouldn't be about pleading or begging for answers. I needed to take charge. This was my life too. I decided to gather the evidence I had found, determined not to let her twist the narrative again. I wanted her to see how deep her betrayal ran, not just in our marriage, but in the way she had deceived everyone around her. The next day, I called her into the living room, my heart pounding as I prepared for the showdown. When she walked in, her expression was a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Jake, please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I held up my phone, showing her the pictures I had found. "What do you have to say about this, Sarah? Were you just friends?" Her face drained of color as she took in the evidence. I can explain," she stuttered, her voice trembling. "Explain what? How you lied to me for months, how you pretended everything was fine while you were out playing house with some other guy. Jake, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I wasn't falling for it this time." "A mistake? This isn't a mistake, this is a choice. You chose to betray me, you chose to betray us." As she tried to speak, I realized I needed to regain control over my feelings, no longer allowing her to dictate the narrative. "You've had your fun, Sarah. Now you'll have to deal with the consequences." I felt the anger wash over me, but it was accompanied by a strange sense of clarity. I was no longer the victim, I was taking my power back. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I was determined not to let this betrayal define me. I knew I had to make a choice, one that would shape the course of my future. The confrontation hung heavy in the air, the tension palpable as I stood firm, my heart racing with a mixture of anger and resolve. Sarah looked small and defeated, tears streaming down her cheeks as she struggled to find the words to justify her actions. But I was done listening to her excuses. I could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, but oddly enough, I also felt a flicker of strength igniting within me. "Jake, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I never meant for it to get this far. It was just a stupid fling. I love you, I really do." Her words felt like a punch to the gut. How could she claim to love me when she had shattered my trust so completely? Love, I scoffed. Does love include lying and cheating? Because that's not the definition I know. I could see the realization wash over her, the understanding that I had finally seen through her web of deception. She was cornered, and I wasn't about to let her wriggle her way out of this one. "You've disrespected our marriage, Sarah. You've disrespected me," I said coldly, feeling the anger surge through my veins. As the silence hung between us, it felt as if time had paused. I didn't want to feel this way, broken and betrayed, but I also refused to let her have the final word. I stood my ground, looking her dead in the eye. "I need to think. I need space to figure this out, to decide how I want to move forward." She nodded, her expression shifting from desperation to resignation. "I understand. Just know that I'm so sorry, Jake. I'll do anything to fix this." "Anything?" I challenged, the bitterness rising in my throat. "You can't just say that. You can't just pretend this didn't happen and expect everything to go back to normal." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, tears still falling. I stepped into the guest room, closing the door behind me, feeling the weight of the decision I had to make pressing down on my chest. I needed to let the days unfold, to clear my head and think rationally. As the days turned into a week, Sarah kept trying to reach out, texts filled with apologies, voicemails begging for a chance to talk. I ignored them all, opting to spend my time alone, focusing on what I wanted for my future. I confided in Brian, who had been a pillar of support. He listened, offering his perspective, but ultimately left the decision in my hands. "Look, you know her better than I do," he said one evening as we shared a drink at my favorite bar. "But you have to ask yourself, can you really trust her again? Can you live with the knowledge of what she did?" His questions lingered in my mind, refusing to let go. I replayed every moment of our relationship, the good and the bad. I remembered our wedding vows, the promises we made to each other, and how easily she had shattered them. One night after work, I decided to take a walk around the nearby lake, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, but all I could feel was a heaviness in my heart. As I walked, memories of happier times with Sarah flooded back. Our first date, our wedding day, the laughter we shared. It was almost unbearable to think how quickly it had all unraveled. I looked around at the couples walking hand in hand, at the families enjoying the golden hour, and a wave of sadness washed over me. I had always envisioned a future with Sarah, but now that future felt like a distant dream, slipping through my fingers like sand. After weeks of deliberation, I reached the conclusion that I needed to confront the reality of our situation. I decided to meet with Sarah one last time, to lay everything out on the table. I wanted to hear her side again and see if there was any shred of honesty left in her. The day of the meeting came, and I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and determination. I chose a small cafe where we had spent many afternoons together, hoping the familiar setting would help ease the tension. When I arrived, I found her already seated, fidgeting with her hands, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. "Hey," I said, taking a seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We sat in silence for a moment and I studied her, the woman I once loved fiercely. "I've thought a lot about everything," I started, my voice steady. "And I need to know why. Why did you do this to us?" She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know, Jake. I was feeling lost, overwhelmed with work and everything. I made a choice that was stupid and selfish. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't, and I regret it every day." "Regret doesn't change what happened, Sarah," I replied, feeling anger bubbling beneath the surface once again. "I need to know if you're willing to fight for us, to rebuild the trust you shattered. Because if not, I can't keep doing this. I need to think of my own happiness." Her face contorted with emotion as she nodded vigorously. "I want to fight for us, I do. I've been seeing a therapist to help me understand why I did what I did. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to making this right." The words sounded desperate, but a part of me wanted to believe her. Yet, as I searched her eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt. I needed to make a choice, one that would ultimately define the future of our relationship. Could I really trust her again? Would I be able to heal from this betrayal? "Sarah, I need time," I finally said, my voice low but resolute. "I can't promise anything right now, and I think it's best if we take a step back. I need to find out who I am outside of this relationship before I can even consider what comes next." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand, Jake. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me one day." I wanted to tell her that I would, but the truth was far more complicated than that. As I left the cafe, the weight of my decision loomed large. I knew the road ahead would be tough, filled with uncertainty and heartache, but I also knew that I needed to prioritize my own healing. The journey ahead would be mine alone, whether that meant moving forward with Sarah or finally breaking free from the chains of betrayal. The decision to take a step back from my marriage felt monumental. Sarah's pleas for reconciliation echoed in my mind, but deep down, I knew I couldn't immediately forgive or forget. I needed to focus on myself, to understand my emotions and regain my footing. It was time for some serious soul-searching. Once I returned home, I found myself grappling with feelings of isolation. Friends and family had no idea about the turmoil brewing in my marriage, and I didn't have the energy to explain everything. I was stuck in a limbo where I felt utterly alone, haunted by memories of Sarah and the life we had built together. I knew I had to do something to break the cycle of pain. I decided to reach out to a therapist, someone who could help me untangle the web of emotions swirling in my mind. My first session was daunting. Sitting across from a stranger and talking about my feelings felt both relieving and terrifying. I shared my story, the betrayal, the anger, and the heartbreak. As I talked, I started to process just how deeply Sarah's actions had hurt me, not just in the context of our marriage, but in the way they had shaken my self-worth. "I can't help but feel like I failed," I confessed to my therapist, my voice thick with emotion. "I thought we had something special, and now I'm not sure it was ever real." She nodded, her expression understanding. "It's important to remember that infidelity is often more about the individual who cheats than the relationship itself. You are not to blame for Sarah's choices." Her words began to resonate with me. I learned that it was normal to feel anger and sadness after such a breach of trust, but I also needed to reclaim my identity. I began to channel my energy into hobbies I had long neglected, picking up my old guitar and diving back into some creative writing. It became my escape, a way to express the turmoil I felt inside. But as I immersed myself in these activities, I couldn't entirely shake the thoughts of Sarah. I often wondered how she was coping, if she was truly committed to changing her ways. I felt a pull to reach out, to check in on her, but I resisted. I wanted to be strong, to stand firm in my decision. Eventually, after a couple of weeks of soul-searching, I decided to initiate a casual communication with Sarah. I texted her, letting her know I was okay and that I was focusing on myself. I didn't want to dive into the depths of our relationship just yet, but I felt it was important to keep the lines of communication open. To my surprise, she responded promptly, her words filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you for reaching out. I've been doing a lot of thinking too. I miss you." Those simple words tugged at my heartstrings. "I miss you too," I typed back, allowing myself a moment of vulnerability, but then I reminded myself of the reality of the situation. But it's going to take time for me to heal. Over the following weeks, we kept our communications light and friendly. We shared updates about our lives, but I made sure to keep emotional discussions at bay. I didn't want to rush into anything, and I knew I had to protect my heart. Each time we exchanged messages, I felt a mix of hope and caution. It was a delicate balance, and I was determined not to let my guard down too soon. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed changes in Sarah's demeanor when we talked. She seemed more introspective, more willing to acknowledge her mistakes without getting defensive. I appreciated her honesty, but I remained skeptical. Could she really change? Or was this just a temporary shift in her behavior? One day, she sent me a text that caught me off guard. "I've been thinking about going to couples therapy. I think it would help us understand each other better." The idea intrigued me, but I was hesitant. Therapy could be a useful tool, but I didn't want to jump into it with her without fully processing my feelings. I decided to consult my therapist about it during our next session. When I brought it up, she encouraged me to consider it carefully. Couples therapy can be beneficial if both parties are committed to the process. However, it's essential that you first feel secure in your own decisions before involving Sarah again, she advised. I appreciated her insights, and for the first time in a while I felt clarity. I realized that I did need to rush back into anything. I needed to build a solid foundation for myself, whether that meant rebuilding my relationship with Sarah or moving on completely. As I weighed my options, I found the courage to suggest a small step forward to Sarah. "How about we start by meeting for coffee this weekend? I think it might help us to talk face to face." Her response was immediate and enthusiastic. "I'd love that. I've missed you so much." As the weekend approached, I felt a swirl of emotions: anticipation, anxiety, and a glimmer of hope. I wasn't sure what the meeting would bring, but I knew I had to be honest with her about my feelings. The day arrived, and as I entered the cafe, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, fidgeting with her hands. When she saw me, her face lit up, but I quickly reminded myself to keep my emotions in check. We exchanged pleasantries, but I could sense the underlying tension in the air. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, taking a seat across from her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking and I wanted to share where I'm at." She nodded, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Me too, I've missed our talks." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've realized that I need to focus on healing myself before I can make any decisions about us. I'm still hurt and I don't want to rush anything." "I completely understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I've been working on myself too, and I see things so differently now. I want to take it slow and rebuild the trust we lost." As we talked, I felt a small flicker of hope. Sarah seemed sincere, and I appreciated her willingness to be vulnerable. But I also knew that words were just that, words. Actions would speak louder in the months to come. We continued to talk, sharing laughter and stories about our lives since we had last seen each other. The connection was still there, but I remained cautious. I wanted to believe in the possibility of a brighter future, but I refused to let my guard down too soon. As our coffee date came to an end, I felt a sense of accomplishment. We had made progress, and I had been honest about my feelings. It was a small step, but it felt significant. I left the cafe with a renewed sense of determination to prioritize my healing, knowing that whether or not we could rebuild our relationship, I was taking control of my own life. The coffee date with Sarah sparked a mix of hope and skepticism in me. While I appreciated her willingness to take things slow, I knew that this was only the beginning of a long journey. I was still grappling with the emotional fallout of her betrayal, and I needed to ensure I took the necessary steps to protect my heart. In the weeks that followed, we continued to meet regularly, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just a walk around the block. Each interaction felt like a careful dance, an effort to navigate the treacherous waters of our fractured relationship. I listened as Sarah shared details about her therapy sessions, expressing her commitment to understanding her actions. I wanted to believe her, but trust is not rebuilt overnight. Despite my reservations, I found myself longing for the connection we once shared. We reminisced about the good times, the laughter, the adventures, the simple moments that had made our marriage special. I could feel the warmth of those memories pulling me back toward her, but I was also painfully aware of the divide her actions had created. One evening, as we walked along a scenic route near the lake, the conversation shifted to the topic of relationships and trust. "Do you think we can ever get back to what we had?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I paused, considering her question carefully. "I want to believe we can, but it's going to take time. Trust is fragile, and right now, I'm still in the process of healing." She nodded, her expression pained but understanding. I get it. I don't want to rush you. I just hope I can prove to you that I can be better. Proving it is one thing, I replied, my voice firm. You have to show me with actions, not just words. I need to see that you're committed to making things right and rebuilding what we lost. Over the next few weeks, I started to notice subtle changes in Sarah. She seemed more attentive, more compassionate. She made an effort to check in on me regularly, ask about my day, and even surprise me with small gestures that showed she was thinking of me. But as much as I wanted to appreciate these efforts, a part of me remained guarded. I kept attending therapy, using those sessions to process my feelings about Sarah and our interactions. My therapist helped me navigate the complexities of forgiveness, emphasizing the importance of understanding and accepting my own emotions. Healing takes time, Jake. She reminded me. Give yourself grace as you figure out what you want. Slowly, I began to open up to the idea of giving our marriage another chance. I wasn't ready to rush back into a romantic relationship, but I could see a path forward for us. After a long talk with my therapist, I decided it was time to propose couples therapy. Sarah had mentioned it before, and I thought it could be a useful tool for both of us. The next time we met, I broached the subject. I think it might be beneficial for us to explore couples therapy. It could give us a safe space to discuss our feelings and work through some of the issues together. Her eyes lit up, and I could sense a wave of relief wash over her. I think that's a great idea. I'd love to do it. I want to make this work, Jake. We spent the next few weeks researching therapists and finally settled on a couples counselor who came highly recommended. When the day of our first session arrived, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I wanted to believe in the process, but I also couldn't shake the fear of what might surface during our discussions. As we entered the therapist's office, I felt a knot in my stomach. Sarah squeezed my hand, and I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was a step toward healing. The therapist greeted us warmly, and we settled into our seats, ready to embark on this journey together. The session began with the therapist asking us to share our perspectives on the relationship, encouraging us to express our feelings openly and honestly. I found myself hesitating, unsure of how to articulate the pain I had experienced. But as I opened up about my hurt and betrayal, I felt a weight lift. It was cathartic to voice my emotions, to acknowledge the impact Sarah's actions had on my life. I watched Sarah. As she listened, her expression a mix of remorse and understanding. When it was her turn to speak, she shared her own struggles and the mistakes that had led her astray. I realize now how selfish I was, she said, her voice shaking. I took everything for granted, and I hurt the person I loved the most. Hearing her admit that out loud was both painful and enlightening. It was the first time I felt a glimmer of hope that she understood the gravity of her actions. The therapist guided us through the session, helping us navigate the emotional terrain and encouraging us to share our desires for the future. As the sessions continued, I found myself starting to feel a flicker of connection again. We explored the dynamics of our relationship, discussing our communication styles and the underlying issues that had contributed to her infidelity. I began to see the progress we were making, even if it was slow. But just as things seemed to be on the upswing, I still felt the specter of doubt lurking in the corners of my mind. The memories of Sarah's betrayal haunted me, and there were moments when I questioned whether I could truly forgive her. I confided in my therapist, who reminded me that healing is not linear. It's okay to have doubts, Jake. It's part of the process. Acknowledge your feelings, but don't let them dictate your decisions. Eventually, we reached a point where we could start setting goals for our relationship. We talked about rebuilding trust and how important it would be to establish clear boundaries moving forward. I could see Sarah's determination to prove herself, and I found myself opening up to the idea of starting anew. On one particularly memorable evening, as we walked through the park after therapy, I felt a sense of renewal between us. The trees were bathed in autumn colors and the air was crisp and invigorating. Sarah turned to me, her eyes filled with hope. "Do you think we can really make this work?" she asked, her voice earnest. I paused, considering her question. I want to believe we can, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us. I need to see consistent progress." Her face broke into a small smile, and in that moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could rebuild, not as the same couple we once were, but as two individuals willing to learn, grow, and start fresh. It wouldn't be easy, but the journey toward healing was worth it. Together, we faced the uncertainty ahead, ready to explore what might lie in the future, whether that was reconciliation or finding peace in our own individual paths. As we continued down the path of couples therapy, I began to see tangible changes in both Sarah and myself. Every session peeled back layers of hurt and resentment, allowing us to confront the wounds that had festered between us. It was both cathartic and challenging, forcing us to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our relationship. I noticed Sarah becoming more open and vulnerable with her feelings. She expressed her fears about losing me and her deep regret for the pain she had caused. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and while I still had my doubts, I was beginning to understand the depths of her remorse. In turn, I was learning to articulate my feelings better, to share my fears of not being able to trust her again, and my longing for the connection we had once cherished. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we decided to take a walk around our favorite neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the streets, and I felt a sense of calm enveloping us. "I never thought we'd be able to talk like this again," Sarah said, her voice soft and reflective. "Me neither," I admitted, allowing a smile to form. "But it feels good. It feels real. I want to keep working on this. I want to show you every day that I'm committed to being the partner you deserve," she said earnestly. I nodded, the weight of her words settling in my heart. "I want that too, but it's going to take time. I need to believe that you mean it." We continued to walk, and as we passed a small park, I suggested we stop for a moment. We sat on a bench, the evening breeze rustling the leaves around us. "You know," I began, "I've realized that while what happened was devastating, it's also made me think about what I truly want in life." Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've spent so long focusing on our relationship, and I think I lost sight of myself in the process. I want to take this time to rediscover who I am, what I enjoy, what makes me happy." Her expression softened as she listened. "I get that. I've been doing a lot of self-reflection too. It's like we both forgot to check in with ourselves while trying to make the other person happy." "Exactly," I said, feeling a sense of camaraderie in our shared realization. "I think if we can both work on ourselves individually, it will only strengthen our relationship moving forward." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I could see the gears turning in Sarah's mind as she processed what I had said. "I want to support you in that, Jake. Whatever you want to explore or pursue, I'm here for you." Her support was refreshing, and it made me feel hopeful about the future. "And I'll do the same for you. Let's focus on building our individual paths and see how we can support each other along the way." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. While the road ahead was still uncertain, I realized that I was learning to not only forgive Sarah, but also to forgive myself, for the pain I had endured and for the doubts that had clouded my vision. As the weeks turned into months, we continued attending therapy, and our sessions became a safe haven for us to navigate our emotions. We began to set boundaries and establish a foundation of trust, slowly but surely rebuilding what had been broken. We made it a point to celebrate small victories together, whether it was a successful week at work or simply enjoying a quiet evening at home. However, even as we made progress, I still had my moments of doubt, nights where I would lie awake, wondering if I could fully trust her again. Each time, I reminded myself that healing is not linear. It's messy and complicated, and that was okay. One day, I decided to surprise Sarah with a picnic at the park where we had shared so many memories. I packed our favorite foods and a bottle of wine. It felt like a good way to reconnect outside the confines of therapy. When she arrived, her smile lit up the entire area, and I felt a warmth spread through me. "This is amazing, Jake," she exclaimed as she spotted the blanket laid out under a large oak tree. We spent the afternoon talking and laughing, reminiscing about our early days and the adventures we had shared. The atmosphere felt light, and I could see the joy in Sarah's eyes as we connected over the little things that had initially drawn us together. At one point, as the sun began to set, I turned to her, my heart racing with vulnerability. "Sarah, I know we've been through so much and there are still hurdles ahead, but I genuinely feel like we're making progress." She nodded, her expression earnest. "I feel it too. I never want to take our relationship for granted again. I love you, Jake, and I'm committed to being a better partner." "I love you too," I replied, the words feeling more profound than they ever had. "I'm learning that healing is a journey, and I want to walk it with you, if we can both keep being honest and dedicated." As we shared that moment, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. There was a long way to go, but I was beginning to understand that forgiveness was a process, not an end goal. In the months that followed, we continued to grow together, individually and as a couple. With time, the wounds began to heal, though their scars remained as reminders of the journey we had undertaken. I learned that love is not just a feeling, it's an action, a commitment to stand by one another through thick and thin. By choosing to confront our issues together, Sarah and I found the strength to navigate our tumultuous past and step into a hopeful future. As we walked hand in hand through the park, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were no longer defined by the betrayal. We were two individuals willing to learn, to grow, and to love again. In the end, I discovered that sometimes, amidst the darkest of moments, it's possible to find light if you're willing to fight for it. And that, perhaps, is the most important lesson of all.